Welcome back to another episode of the Corporate Cowboys podcast. My name is Alex. For the next half hour, you've got me as your career consultant. Granted, it's not a question you might have asked, but it's a question somebody else brought up on their own path to professional development. Maybe it'll help you, maybe it'll edify you, maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. If you have a question on your mind, you think you need some help on making your next move within corporate, maybe you haven't even broken into corporate yet, and you're doing some reconnaissance of your own, right? I hope, and it's our mission here at the Corporate Cowboys podcast with the Corporate Cowboys. That's, just associates incorporating associates, right? It's our hope that this podcast helps you on your journey to become a better professional and to move like a corporate cowboy. If you have any questions, would like to reach out to us, by all means, you could do that. We're on Instagram. That's at Corporate Cowboys with a Z. Again, that's Corporate Cowboys with a Z. We're also on Patreon. That's the Corporate Cowboys podcast. And you can find us also on, what's the other one? Rumble? Yeah, you can find us on Rumble, on YouTube. We're out and about. Come and listen. Come take a listen. Write to us even. P.O. Box 3372, Rancho Cordova, California, 95741. Today's question, interestingly, not really interestingly, comes from r/career guidance, right? I mean, I think it's interesting because of the predicament that this person finds themselves in. I just read the title and it says, do I still have to pay back my sign-on bonus? Just right off the bat, assume that you do. Assume that you do. When they say, when somebody asks, do I still have to do this? Right? It's as if they agreed to do it, and then after they left prematurely, we'll call it. That's what I'm thinking. That's the conclusion that I'm arriving to in my mind. When somebody says, do I still have to do this, in quotes, do I still have to fucking brush my teeth? Right? It's because they know. They know and they agreed to. Whether it's expressly or implicitly, they agreed to brush their fucking teeth. They agreed to give back their sign-on bonus if some condition was satisfied. If they left their position prematurely, or if they gave no notice, if they were fired for cause, right? Maybe they were booted out of the fucking job and corporate's now like, yo, I'm clawing back that fucking sign-on bonus that we gave you when we first hired you on. That's what that's called, by the way. That's a clawback provision. If in your employment agreement, there is a provision that states any sign-on bonus or any property that was given to you as an incentive to work for them, any of that information that has to be returned if you should happen to leave prematurely, you have to return. That is a clawback provision, that they're clawing back whatever little benefit they gave you when they first hired you on. Assume that you do. Even if you got 100,000, okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, right? Because very few people get 100,000 or $1 million sign-on bonuses. I'm talking about top shotters. I'm talking about like actual corporate cowboys who are putting in stupid amounts of work. They might be getting those figures, but for us, and I'll include myself, for we, the little people, we probably get what? Anywhere from 5, sometimes less, 5, 10, 20 grand. I mean, 20 grand is pushing it. I've heard of 40, right? And that was with government contracts too. Like, I mean, we're talking military. But in the private sector, you could see them from various ranges. You could see that occur within various ranges, right? From 0 to 100K. And then 100K up onward, you're pushing it. You're pushing. You've got to be somebody special, doing special things. Assume that you do, even if the term is only for a year and you're like, I'll hack it. I'll make it through this year. Don't go blowing that money. If you can't pay it back, if you don't have the funds to back that up, to pay that back, don't go wild spending it, right? You might have at least 5,000 in your bank account and you get a 5,000 sign-on bonus. I mean, do what you want. You've got 5 grand to pay it back with. It's not like it's gonna put you out or will take you to collections. But if it's part of your agreement that you have to pay it back and you don't have that money on you, you may, this is not legal advice, you may become liable for that money that you agreed to take when you were hired on and you agreed to give back if you had to, right? Simple as that. Work conservatively here. You don't have to think conservatively, but you have to work conservatively. That's the notion of a corporate cowboy that's taking care of business. In order to have business take care of them, you have to work conservatively. Think liberally if you want, but work conservatively. Work in a way that can be reproducible, that can be universalizable. Is that how it goes? Universalable. Universalizable. I think that's the term I'm looking for. In a way that you can universalize, in a way that's sustainable. Anyways, that was a rant on just the title. I didn't even read the body. The body is probably something similar. Oh, I agreed to pay this money back if I didn't stay on for 3 years and I left at 2 years. Do I still have to pay back my sign-on bonus? Yes. Yes, you do. Yes, if you're a professional, right? Of course, it always depends. But me personally, I would say yes, you do. Again, not legal advice because it always depends on the situation, on the circumstance, because it may be that you were unlawfully fired, wrongfully fired, right? You being let go uh, or you leaving the company was for good reason. And so you don't have to pay it back. Maybe you can just keep it. You don't you shouldn't expect them to try and claw it back by, I don't know, sending you to collections. That's a little extreme. But you shouldn't expect them to come knocking at your door or giving you a call or sending you a official mail or an email. Nah, none of that. That may just be the fact. But again, if I'm giving you a legal answer, it depends. It always depends. It depends. All right, the body says, when I got hired at my current position, here we go. This is where it starts. There's a climb. There was a 5,000 sign-on bonus. Yeah. Okay. The caveat was that if I left within 1 year, here it is, I would have to pay back the bonus. The location for the job is hybrid, with 2 days at the office and 3 days being remote. Recently, it was announced that we're going to 3 days in the office and 2 remote. Would I need to pay back the bonus given the change to the hybrid policy? I feel like I'm still going to need to pay it back, but I didn't know if there was any chance of avoiding that because of the change. Thanks for the advice. Now, this is not legal advice, what I'm giving you now. It may be professional, it may be corporate cowboy advice, so you can move in a more professional manner, but it's not legal. Don't rely on my words, right? any I always leave the disclaimer in the description. Any content pushed through this podcast should not be taken as legal advice nor meant to condone any wrongful activity, right? So, in regards to the change in the work conditions, something that you may or may not have impliedly agreed to, you've got to go to the employment agreement, right? If you're moving if you're moving with intent, if you're moving like a corporate cowboy, you ought to know what you signed up for. You ought to know what you signed on the dotted line for. And that is your employment agreement. Whether or not you can make a case to keep that money, that depends. That depends on what the employment agreement reads. Whether or not the scope of your work being hybrid is subject to change, right? Quote unquote. That might be some operative language in there. It's subject to change depending on circumstances, depending on guidelines, depending on if there's if there's some kind of state order or something coming down from the county in terms of, I don't know, health and wellness, quote unquote. I mean, I'm not going to claim it to be a mandate or anything like that in terms of like public policy, but your employment agreement is going to control first, because it more often than not is going to be a little more restrictive, a little more conservative than what's coming down from government bureaucrats. At least in the organizations I've studied, organizations I've audited, policy tends to be a little more on the conservative side than the government does. So, this language is going to appear in your employment agreement. And it's up to you to go back, find what you signed for. I mean, it hasn't even been a year. Me personally, I would have read that from cover to cover. Read that from cover to cover and then negotiate. And then negotiate. You can maybe not redline the fucking contract, but you could strike through some language, add your own, initial it, send it to them, have them sign it and agree whether or not they need to initial it. I mean, that also depends on what jurisdiction you're in. But these are terms that you should be hammering out with a hiring manager before even signing on. If the hybrid situation, if the work from home in the office situation should happen to change, I mean, the fact you never contemplated it changing, at least to me, lets me know that you dropped the ball. You let it slip between the cracks. It got away from you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because now you've got to reconcile with the fact that depending on what your employment agreement says, you're likely to end up paying back that bonus, right? And the reason I say likely is because the fact that you don't bring up your employment agreement here lets me know that you might have signed it, right? I might just be jumping to a conclusion, right? But it's meant to expose you. If it offends you, it's because it's meant to expose you. If the shoe fits, lace that bitch up and go back and read your employment agreement, because that's going to be necessary regardless. You really want to know whether or not you should pay this back? Go look at your employment agreement. You're going to end up reading it. If not, you're going to end up with some type of collections letter requesting that money back, or because you breached your own agreement, having not read it and having performed on it, not substantially, right? Because you breached on the performance of it. By not returning that bonus, you're opening yourself up to problems. To problems. They could be legal, they could be professional, they could be personal, but they're going to impact your career. How do you address this going forward? Fucking read what you sign. It can't be that hard. It can't be that crazy. I mean, I've heard of companies not coming back to get the bonus, but again, circumstances vary. Your mileage may vary. and circumstances are different from case to case. Maybe they didn't think that the bonus was big enough to come back and get, or maybe I mean management, maybe management just deemed it not worth getting because of the circumstances that led to you leaving. Maybe you had more right to leave than they had right to keep you and that bonus, right? So whatever clawback provision they had was looking rather weak. If the reason you left was for example, as an example, the reason you left was because they're doing some shady, corrupt shit and you didn't want to be a part of it. So you left and you didn't pay back the bonus. Huh? It doesn't mean that that's hush money. It doesn't mean it's blood money. Nah, you just kept the bonus. Fuck them. You did it moving. Your reputation, I presume, would largely remain intact for you to continue looking for work and working as a professional. It shouldn't impact your professional image. You know what would impact your professional image? Is if word gets out, again, dependent on context, dependent on the facts available. If the industry that you're in is small, tight knit, and they know you as an executive, I mean, a $5,000 bonus, I doubt you're an executive, right? This really may be more entry level in engineering, maybe some type of managerial position, a supervisor. But I mean, when we're talking VPs on up of substantial organizations, anything from lower mid-size and higher, 5K is starters. 5K is starters. Let's take a look at these comments real quick and I'll critique them. But like I said, at the very beginning, you want to plan as if you will be paying that shit back. And then after you clear whatever hurdle, whatever condition that you had to satisfy after that condition lapses, well, then you're sitting on 5K. Cool and free. Free to use, free to invest, free to buy office supplies and heavy metal with. I mean, that's what our money goes to. You want to shoot us $1? You want to pitch us $1 million? There's some money apps floating around. If not, send it to the P.O. box. Whatever value it is that you're sending, send it to the P.O. box, man. We'll figure it out later. Help keep this operation nonprofit. All monies received go to business expenses and legal fees. Okay. The first comment here says they're going to ask for their money back. Yeah, straight to the fucking point, man. You have to read that employment agreement. If this organization halfway knows what the fuck they're doing, they're already planning ahead that if you leave early, they're going to want their money back. And so this comment says they're going to ask for their money back. That said, it continues, that said, I think you've got an interesting case and you could fight it in small claims court if you were interested, though. Does the letter they sent you include any provisions about them changing terms about your work location? And it's not just the letter, it goes back to the employment agreement. Whether or not any of those provisions in the employment agreement include language authorizing or giving the company discretion to change work location. Sometimes it'll say within reason. But the fact that it opens the door, giving the company discretion, giving the company authority to just change it on you unilaterally without you having to agree or to consent, and they just claim within reason, and sometimes within reason, that language, all that just means is just giving you notice, giving you like a month notice, maybe even giving you a week notice, depending on what the industry practice is, depending on what the industry standard is. Maybe you guys have some kind of work group chat going, and through there they communicate, hey, folks, next week, expect to show up in person one more day. We're going to cut down on hybrid. And then they justify it, I don't know, with the fact that we find that metrics look better when folks are working in person and interacting together across departments as opposed to using this chat, right? Something something relatively official, an email, some type of official correspondence, a newsletter. When you're in the office in person, they're handing out a newsletter stating that next week or next month, next quarter, folks will be one additional day in person in the office, right? Keep an eye out for that language. And if there isn't, if there is not, well, if the language in there can be interpreted in a way that does not give them the discretion, that does not give them the authority to change the scope, to change the terms of your employment without your prior consent, without your agreement, you may have a case on your hands. Again, not legal advice, not legal advice. This person is saying you could take it to small claims court. I say if it were me and it happened to me and the agreement was in my favor, my employment agreement was in my favor, I ain't taking shit to court. I'm keeping the money. What, they're gonna come back and ask for money that doesn't belong to them? I'm treating it as if it belongs to me. And even then, I'm sitting on it for a cool minute because they're gonna contest it. It may become a little point of contention, right? So the money might be hot. I'm not gonna go out of my way and spend that money because if they do start some bullshit, try to litigate it, file a suit, take me to collections or whatever, it might be in my interest, in my better interest, to just give the money back. It might not be worth the headache. Just like some organizations, it may not be in their best interest to pursue this bonus, like this $5,000 bonus. It depends. If your salary was like a six-figure salary, 5K is a drop in the bucket. They might just dust off their hands and chalk it up to a loss. But if your salary is what, like 60K? 60K compared to a 5K sign-on bonus was something that they had to hook you in. More than likely, again, the facts, all the facts matter. And that might just be the reason to have a clawback provision if the sign-on bonus is substantial, given the size of your salary, given the proportion of your salary. This is all, but this is a high level technical strategy, right? This all depends on the facts. Because this person, if they were again sitting in front of me, if we were on a one-to-one, if this was an actual consult, you don't think I'd have these questions for them? Their experience, their salary, their education, the industry, the organization, and we would break that down. What level? What title? Any additional pieces, moving parts to the comp plan, to the compensation plan. These are all facts that you'd want to know before I gave an informed opinion, something actionable to the client. I'd want to know these facts. But I'm answering in generalities here, which is plan to pay it back. Fucking plan on it. Take whatever sign-on bonus, put it in a money market account, put it somewhere where you could flip it. Okay, maybe not flip it, right? Put it somewhere where it's at least sitting on some interest, right? Okay, I'm over here. Go buy some zips and flip it. No, don't do any of that. Go buy some peas and some keys. No. Just let it sit while it's hot, while it still has strings attached. Let it sit until it's clear, until it's free, until whatever conditions that have been imposed on this sign-on bonus all lapse. And then you can walk away with your sign-on bonus free and clear. So this next comment here says, I would plan on paying it back. There you fucking go. Let's go, Alex. The dude doesn't miss. Corporate Cowboys at your service. How can we help? Again, that's speaking in generalities. I would plan on paying it back. It continues here. I think it's smart to start looking now. Nothing is stopping them from ending hybrid altogether. No, that's not exactly true. If it might take you until your 1 year anniversary to find another role. I'm saying, yeah, it might take you your entire year to find a new role. You can also bring it up during the later interviews or once an offer is made for a new role and see if the new company will match the bonus to make leaving less painful for you. But don't count on it, they say. Let me break that down for you real quick. That the first part it says here, yeah, I would plan on paying it back. Obvious. Plan on paying it back. At least hold on to it. Don't let it fucking escape between your fingers like sand, like water, right? Don't let it get away from you. Because if you're ass out on 5K and you have to pay it back and you don't have 5K to pay back, you're ass out. You're ass out. You're exposed. It says here, I think it's smart to start looking now. Nothing is stopping them from ending hybrid altogether. That's not necessarily true. You want to look at your employment agreement. Because now, just because I started the podcast on the defensive, planning to pay it back, doesn't mean you can't go on the offensive. Doesn't mean you can't be dictating you yourself and enforcing the contract, enforcing the employment agreement the way you agreed to it, which was to work 3 days hybrid and 2 days in person. You don't want to change the terms? You don't change the terms. The end. But that depends. Again, and I'll harp on this. I'll hound you on this. As my client, it depends on what you agree to by signing, which is the agreement. Go read that shit. Go back and read it. You need help deciphering it? I can interpret it for you. Send it to us. The rates, our rates are more than reasonable. You want to know what you signed on for? First of all, you should know what the fuck you signed on for, because this is a corporate war. And you sign the line, you become a soldier of sorts. You become a merc on the payroll for somebody else. If you're not working for yourself, you're working for somebody else. And in this game, you need to know what the fuck you signed on for, what you're obligated to do, what your duties are, what your rights are, if any. What if you signed away your rights? What if they can end remote work? What if they can end this hybrid arrangement altogether and you've got shit to show for it other than a complaint? Oh, I don't want to show up to work 5 days a week. Fucking, that's because you fumbled the bag. You fucked up by signing, not knowing what you're getting into. It sounds repetitive, but this is a common theme. It's a common occurrence, unfortunately. You could mitigate this beforehand by having a representative, by having a consultant. I'm not a representative because, I mean, we're not, even though we could be legal representatives, right? If, God forbid we got to go to court, wouldn't you want a consultant in your corner first that you can send this employment agreement to interpret the agreement, to give you notes on it, what portions of it might be fucking you over, what portions of it are actually in your favor, and what you can do about it to negotiate? The next comment here says, it's all in the wording and how much fight you can afford. It's all in the wording and how much fight you can afford. Yeah, I said that. It depends what the words on the actual employment agreement say. And as far as you being able to afford it, really, that's just a headache. It's whether or not you can afford this fucking headache. Because the company is thinking the same way. Can we afford this fucking headache of having to go get this 5K? Is 5K actually worth it? Shit, because push may come to shove and they only want 25 of it back. You know what? Keep 25 of it. We want 25 of it back. You don't know where the chips are going to land. And that always depends on the context. You need the facts. You need to know all the circumstances that go into informing this situation. That's it, fam. Not these three. I'm gonna just keep it to these three comments. It's been 30 minutes, and I haven't missed once. I haven't missed, not even once. My name is Alex. You need help. You need a strategist in your corner. You need a facilitator. You need to learn how to move like a corporate cowboy, and you only do so by associating with one. Come on over. We are more than happy to help. Oh, today's proof of life before I forget. It's Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. Have a nice day. I'll catch you next time.